this summer, we've seen 2 back-to-back months that are the hottest ever recorded globally, not just in the U.S. And that's also really contributed to some wildfires that we've seen both in Europe and especially in Canada, which has seen its worst wildfire season on record. And it's also really played a role in emissions in kind of a surprising way.
Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle. I'm joined today by energy and environment reporter Breanne Deppisch. Breanne, there's a new hot issue. It's been heating up. Extreme heat is what the Biden administration says that they really would like to resolve. There's been a lot of problems with 100+ degree temperatures across the country. What have they rolled out as part of their package on this?
So they have rolled out a lot of new measures, which Biden announced today. That's actually something that I have not quite gotten a chance to dig into as much as my colleague, but but yes, certainly heat has been top of mind for policymakers. This summer, we've seen 2 back-to-back months that are the hottest ever recorded globally, not just in the U.S. And that's also really contributed to some wildfires that we've seen both in Europe and especially in Canada, which has seen its worst wildfire season on record. And it's also really played a role in emissions in kind of a surprising way.
Right, and so that has been a real big problem over the course of the summer, is that here in the United States and cities like here in D.C., we've dealt with the air quality problems from these emissions from the Canadian wildfires.
Yeah, we have. And actually, I spoke to the head of Canada's Natural Resources Institute. He leads a team of scientists that basically, for the last 30 years, has studied carbon emissions from Canada's forests. And they found that actually this year alone, the emissions from wildfires that they've seen have doubled total emissions from the transportation sector, oil and gas, every other sector of their economy combined, just because of these wildfire emissions. That's partially because Canada has so many forests. It has the largest boreal forest. I think it's like the size of Argentina, and it's also, so there are a lot of factors there, but they are trying to address the issue by putting more funds behind that effort, and also trying to create more infrastructure to help personnel access and respond to wildfires, because a lot of the areas are pretty rural, no one lives there, so just trying to create access to that.
Proving the old adage that where there's smoke, there's fire.
Exactly.
So where are we with Mountain Valley Pipeline and Senator Manchin's efforts in that area? Obviously a very important senator for all these types of discussions.
Yes, Manchin has been front and center, and we've seen some more back and forth over Mountain Valley. In the latest turn of events, the Supreme Court actually it vacated the current stays that had halted action on the pipeline. And actually it did so while the two sides were arguing in oral arguments in Richmond over the stays and whether or not they were justified. So really interesting timing from the Supreme Court. It does allow, it's a victory, at least in the near term, for the pipeline developers and for Manchin, who had also joined in filing an amicus brief with the court. It allows them to resume construction. They're about 90% completed with a pipeline. And project developers previously said that they could begin operations, as early as the end of the year. It is a big victory for him. He praised the news on Twitter. He called it a relief. But it is unclear, whether these other court cases, how they will play out. One of them deals with endangered species protections surrounding the pipeline, and there is a possibility that these lower courts could rule in favor of environmental groups that have challenged the project.
So even though a short-term victory, there is still a little bit of legal limbo going on.
Yeah. So the Supreme Court decision was very short. It didn't give any rationale as to why it made the decision. It didn't note any dissent. It was pretty much just a couple lines. And it was interesting that they chose today to do so, because they are actually in recess right now. So no one was really expecting this.
Sure.
I think it took a couple minutes actually during the oral arguments before the lawyers themselves realized that they had issued this order. But obviously I think Manchin needs Mountain Valley Pipeline for his re-election campaign. He's really centered. focused on that and permitting issues, as he eyes another re-election bid.
Have there been any permitting developments?
So the Senate had a hearing basically focusing on permitting issues and sort of trying a new angle, which was focusing on transmission lines as a way of boosting grid capacity and helping meet increased demand. He cited, I think, there are a couple states, with these extreme heat and intense weather patterns that we've seen, like California, that rely on these regional grids and energy imports for, in the event of a supply emergency. I think in 2021, California imported almost all of its electricity at a certain point from other Western states to avoid a blackout, and just on a regular basis imports about 25%. And these interstate transmission lines take about a decade to come online, I believe. And so they also require, really large-scale investments, and developing them on a regional level and ensuring that the grids remain connected is really key. And obviously, this requires permitting, and so this was a sort of new angle that Manchin sought to capitalize on in the hearing.
So you don't want to go off the grid?
I do not want to go off the grid. Maybe soon.
Thank you, Breanne.
Thank you.
You can read Breanne and subscribe to our Daily on Energy newsletter at washingtonexaminer.com.